Lou Holtz, the famous football coach from Notre Dame, once said, "It's not the load that breaks you down, it is the way that you carry it." How you doing? I'm AJ Webb, your SLV Health Wellness Coordinator, and I have an interview for you today about stress and behavioral health. Now, stress is the load. We all carry it. We carry it in different ways. And we carry that stress in our relationships, in our day-to-day workload, with our relationships with our children, and it's a constant, and for the most part it's normal. However, sometimes it can interrupt the way that you live, the way that you laugh, and the way that you love. And that's why we have folks like Laura Burkhardt in our behavioral health team to help us out with these issues when we just need a little bit of extra help. And they're generally good for anybody that is looking to build some resiliency, add to their coping skills so that we can manage this stress so that we can continue to live happy, healthy lives. In this interview, we talk about a variety of different things. Laura and I sit down, we talk about what behavioral health is, the benefits of a behavioral health visit, what to expect during a behavioral health visit, how to get access to them, and then we go through a fireball round where I list 6 buzzwords or words that are commonly used in health and wellness regarding stress, and Laura tells me her expert opinion and her thoughts on those topics. I know you'll enjoy this interview. Have a great day. Remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like these videos, leave some comments, and share them with your friends. And if you're interested in keeping up with what's going on with San Luis Valley Health's wellness program, whether it's for you or whether it's for your corporate wellness program, you can visit us at slvhwellness.blogspot.com, where you can see interviews like this one where I sit down and talk with Adam Lawrence, Director of Clinical Nutrition, a registered dietitian, about everything you need to know to get the basics down for what you need to eat. See you there. All right. Laura Burkhardt, thank you for coming to my wellness cave to hang out with me and tell us about behavioral health. I used to work in behavioral health, so it's something that's fascinating to me. I got to be a recruiter and I got to talk to a lot of clinical social workers and counselors and learn about the different modalities, and it's a fascinating thing to me. But I want to learn more about you. Can you tell us your name, what's your title here at SLV Health, and what you do on a regular basis?
Thanks so much for having me,
No problem.
and
Thank
AJ.
you.
It's an exciting opportunity to talk about probably the thing I love
Good.
most, which is
Awesome.
behavioral health.
Well, tell us about yourself.
I'm a behavioral health therapist here at San Luis Valley Health. I've been here for a little over a year and a half. It'll be 2 years this summer, and I'm a licensed social worker.
Very nice.
And I got into the field for a number of reasons, but I chose social work specifically because it has such a focus on social justice. I know I wanted to work with individuals and families, but to not leave out this huge component of the environment that we live in and that we are all ultimately products of. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Where did you study?
at Metro State University in Denver.
Very nice. And did you get both your degrees from there?
Yep.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. How was how do you like it here in the Valley? I understand you like to do a little camping and spend some time outdoors.
Yeah, I love it. It's
Awesome.
beautiful here.
Sounds like good self-care for you.
It definitely is.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you work as a part of the behavioral health team. Let's unpack that, right? Because you can say behavioral health, kind of like wellness. You can run in a bunch of different ways. Oh, that means yoga and working out. But when we say behavioral health, what are some of the things that come to mind, and how can you describe it to us?
Well, behavioral health grew out of field of psychoanalytical therapy, but
Okay.
I don't think that's quite cut out for everybody to sit on the couch for every day for years and years on end to try to discover who they are. So behavioral health has a focus on much shorter treatment modality, and more than really understanding the psyche, it's about changing behavior that's either going to increase our quality of life and hopefully enhance it.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is a very succinct way to describe it. So, folks that come in to see you, what are some of the benefits of behavioral health?
Oh boy, I think it's endless. Everywhere from just increased self-knowledge and increasing self-worth and self-esteem and a greater sense of one's belonging and position here on earth at maybe a little higher level of functioning, all the way very down to if you are feeling like there's a lack of meaning in life and a lack of purpose and you don't want to get out of bed, then behavioral health therapy can help motivate for very simple things such as getting up and showering and feeding yourself. So, that what I just said touches both on depression. It touches more on someone who's maybe functioning at a high level but wants to continue gaining insight. So
wonderful. Laura, can you tell us, how does one get started with behavioral health, right? If I'm having trouble with something or I want to explore something, right? It may not even be a problem. I want to learn a little bit more about myself and how I navigate this world and how I can be the best version of myself. How could I get started in behavioral health?
Well, we'd love to see you here at our clinic. Okay. You can call 719-587-8008.
Oh, wonderful.
We'll double check that number.
Yeah, definitely.
But you'll speak to our lovely admin rep, Amanda Wade, and she'll get some basic information from you, name, birth date, phone number, and your insurance, and then she'll get a run everything through, make sure it'll be covered. If for some reason it's not covered under your insurance plan, we do have some sliding scale payment options, and we try to never turn anybody away. It may be that we have to refer out of our clinic, but hopefully we are able to see you here. So
wonderful. It sounds very similar to going to the doctor. It sounds very similar. Like I have a cold, and it's very interesting. We don't always treat the behavioral health issues or the different things that individuals are going through, like a hurt foot, like a cough, and they have a lot more in common than they do differently. One just isn't. You just can't see it the same way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, AJ. It makes me excited to work here, at San Luis Valley Health, because there is this culture that our mind and our body are equally important, and our emotions, and to not separate those two things. Right. So exactly, I think some people are embarrassed to come in and talk about the stress that's going on in their family, whereas they wouldn't think twice to come in if they have a high fever. So it's helping to break down that stigma and to treat ourselves with kindness in all aspects.
Right. The stigma is a powerful word. I was very fortunate to be a mental health first aid trainer over at the behavioral health group, and that was a really cool job because we got to talk about behavioral health and what it is, what it means, what are the different conditions that are out there that you might see on a regular basis. If you're a teacher, we did a lot of work with teachers.
Awesome.
And so we got to just go over the basics. And in that training, you don't get, tuned up to be a counselor to fix anything, right? Just like now, if I hurt myself or if I start grabbing my chest with chest pains, you're not going to go into surgery with me, but you're going to help me out to the best of your ability and get me to the proper folks to take care of me.
Right.
And so talking about that stigma and working to normalize behavioral health as a part of the entire body, spirit, mind, unit to take care of was something that we did. So
awesome.
It's a lot of fun for me to talk about behavioral health.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you see a lot of folks coming into your office for? Like, what are some of the common things?
Most common diagnosis right now in the United States of America is anxiety.
Okay.
So that definitely is reflected here in our office. A lot of generalized anxiety to this kind of on edge feeling and worried about a lot of different things to more specific, anxious about a surgery I have coming up, or anxious because my husband just left me. Very situational to a very broad. I'd say up there with anxiety is depression.
Okay.
And we see a lot of people who also have health problems. So those two things can go hand in hand, because when you're not physically able to do the things you love and enjoy, depression is natural to set in. So we help to support people in recreating some of their identities and recreating the lives that they have become accustomed to living.
Gotcha. So the one of the ways that we would describe a behavioral health issue or condition, we would say something that interferes your ability to live, laugh, and love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a real simplified way. And those happen all the time. I mean, it's normal for things to happen, but sometimes it's a bit much, right? It's a little bit different. So can you help me kind of differentiate, you know, that normal stress of, you know, the little kids and the work deadlines and things like that, to where I should probably go and get myself, you know, I should go see an expert like yourself.
Yeah, what a great question. I'm going to give 2 answers.
Okay.
So my first answer is everybody should just come in.
Okay.
For preventative mental health.
Perfect.
Like you would, you know, go to your doctor for a well visit check. Come in and talk things through. And sometimes it's through talking and processing that you realize there's some stuff that maybe needs addressing or needs changing. Or you're like, yep, just keep doing what you're doing. Things sound good.
I haven't met a whole lot of people that couldn't use a little extra affirmation or advice. So I think that's a great tip. So everyone should come in. What's your second part?
My second part is just some signs and symptoms to look for, to know if maybe the normal stress is becoming a disorder or is becoming impairing with your ability to function in everyday life. And so that would be if you're feeling maybe down, depressed, hopeless, more days than not, or more of the day than not of the day. Like you said, it's normal to have ups and downs throughout the week, but if it's becoming the norm, if you're feeling like you can't stop worrying, if that, you know, those racing thoughts just keep going and going and going, and if it's impairing with your ability to sleep, which I know is very common for a lot of folks, you can't turn your mind off, so to speak.
Right.
Other things to look for is any physical symptoms that could be stress related, such as nausea and abdominal pain that the docs can't find anything wrong with. A lot of time that stress is affecting our gut and our stomach there. Any chronic pain that you know, doesn't seem to have a reason. You know, the doctors can't find anything wrong with you. You are just frustrated because you have all this pain and you don't know why. A lot of that is because of some trauma occurring in the early childhood or current stress.
Okay.
So other physical symptoms, maybe headaches on a daily basis. I think, you know, we've all experienced having a super stressful day and our head is just pounding.
Right, you're pulling the...
Yep, like right here. And then any amount of, I'll use a fancy word, emotional dysregulation. So if you're feeling like little things are just putting you over the edge, you can't seem to handle the little stresses and the little disappointments in life, your response feels exaggerated, excessive crying or easily angered, or if any of that is happening, I'd say it'd be worthwhile to make an appointment and see some help.
How about if we might... How would we go about talking to a loved one about possibly seeing? That's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a risky thing. We don't want to, sometimes we don't want to meddle, and it's kind of a difficult thing to say, hey, I think you might benefit from this because of some of the stigma attached to it. But what if we're making some observations in our partner or a coworker? Any tactics as far as not necessarily just, hey, I think you got to go do this, but what would you think about a situation like that?
I agree that stigma is still very real. I wish I could just say, well, just say it so we can get rid of this stigma, but it is a sensitive topic for a lot of people, and that would totally depend on your relationship, right? If it's a coworker you don't know very well, I think it would totally be appropriate to remind them of the benefits they have here and get free counseling. And I always like to use a little self-disclosure, you know. I've been working with my counselor on this and it's been really helpful. Or, you know, I know you're going through this hard time. When I went through something similar, counseling helped me in this way. So really
lots of people go to counseling. You know, it's not an abnormal, I mean, it's become more, you know, socially accepted in some ways, but I mean, there's a lot of folks graduating from, you know, not as many as we'd like because it's a, you know, it's a big job that you guys have, but there's a lot of folks that take advantage of an objective third party to help you work through some different issues, give you either some hot tips or possibly refer you to a more intense intervention. But it's I mean, you call your mom, you ask for a little bit of help, and maybe that's not something that's as easily accessible. And but there's counselors like yourself out there, and then a lot of employers, they do have employee assistance programs. Right? We're fortunate here that we have two. You can go in house, and you get 3 free sessions through our internal department, and then you can also use our Lincoln Financial benefit, and you can, if you just for whatever reason don't feel comfortable going inside, you can go and use those. I myself have used those benefits, and it's a great way to, work to manage your stress, your anxiety, your whatever it is that you need to take care of you.
Exactly.
And it's awesome that many employers provide that.
Yeah, great benefit.
Can you tell me, it's almost like a game, right? Because there's a lot of buzzwords, either buzzwords or words that I've heard frequently in, my work in behavioral health, and that I've seen get thrown around a lot in the wellness arena. And I'd like you to maybe just give me some of your thoughts on a few of these words, right? So this is what I like to call a fireball round, right? So I'm going to list off a few different words, and you can tell me a little bit about what you think. You go as long as you want, all right? Or you can keep it to hate it, or whatever works for you, right? So my first word is stress.
Hate it.
Hate it.
Just joking. So I'd say a natural evolutionary response in our body to handle danger.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's a good thing to be stressed sometimes, but when it goes a little bit too far, we can get in our own way.
Absolutely. I'll elaborate on that just to emphasize that stress is a daily part of life. And without it, we wouldn't really be functioning, because there wouldn't be a lot of stimuli getting us going. But when it becomes to the point where we're not recovering from stress, so it's important to get stressed, have that response, and then recover and up and down. But if it just goes, that's when it becomes an issue.
Perfect. Stress. There we go. Now, this one gets thrown around a lot. There's even a whole module in our wellness program about mindfulness.
Oh, I'd say I just love I love it. I know it is, like you're saying, trendy and getting more attention because it's really the key to life. But I like the definition. Simply being mindful is being aware in the present moment without judgment.
Oh, okay.
So just letting life unfold around us as an aware participant of it, but not being pulled and hooked into all these different things, by keeping a non-judgmental approach.
Wonderful. I'm going rogue a little bit. Do you have a favorite tactic to cultivate mindfulness? There's a point where I would so I have a little ritual after lunch where I have a piece of chocolate and I kind of just work to enjoy it, right? What's something that what's a simple hot tip for someone to cultivate a little bit of mindfulness?
Your chocolate example is nice because some people, I think, hear mindfulness and they say, I have enough to do. I don't need to meditate for half an hour every day. Right. And so these little informal things to do to remind ourselves, wait, it's a beautiful world we're living in. Well, that was a judgment statement, but it is a world we're living in. So let's take part. One of my favorite is mindful walking. So between walking from my car to the parking lot, just engaging all 5 senses. What am I hearing? What sounds? What am I seeing? Looking around, really being like, wow, this guy is really crazy right now, or the buds are coming up, or what do I smell? And so that can
literally smell it, stopping and smell the flowers.
Exactly. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's talk about trauma.
I think that trauma can be defined very broadly, and some people, I believe, have an idea of trauma that maybe minimizes their own experiences. But trauma in Greek means wound to the soul.
Oh, okay.
So anything that is wounding our soul. To have a traumatic stress disorder becomes a little more specific, and that kind of traumatic experience refers to either being exposed to someone dying or life-threatening event, yourself being exposed to a life-threatening event, or sexual violence or harassment. And so, or being exposed as a what we call secondary trauma. So if you were telling me, telling me about something that happened in your life, I could be traumatically affected.
Right.
But really, trauma can be, and it's so independent. What maybe affects you as traumatic wouldn't affect somebody else.
Very subjective.
It's subjective.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give a few examples of trauma that people might not regard so much as trauma, but I think divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Going through a situation where you're losing everything you knew,
right,
and your world is turned upside down.
Right.
Losing a job can be traumatic. The financial hardships that come with that. I think being verbally harassed. People might not feel like they were victims of trauma, but that can be very scary and very traumatic.
Right. As much as, I don't know, we minimize those things and think that we're supposed to suck it up or this isn't that bad, but by acknowledging that these things are difficult and tough, that's well, I think that's powerful. So I'm glad. I like the way you unpack trauma, the wound to the soul.
The wound to the soul, exactly. And I do think that under every symptom that we normally see in our clinic, there's a underlying trauma. And there's more and more research coming out around depression. For a long time, I think there was a focus on some kind of chemical or biological imbalance. And there's still a little evidence supporting that, but the more we look into it, it's all the trauma and a lot of early childhood trauma. So how we were treated when we were growing up has a lot to how we are as adults. There's this huge study called the ACE study that you're probably familiar with, and it tracked these different adverse events that happen to children growing up and linked them with the health outcomes in the future. And really, really fascinating, increased chances of substance use, increased even cholesterol, things that we might not think as directly related, and of course depression and suicidal ideation. So trauma is, I think, the source.
We could probably talk a whole hour about the ACE study and how trauma affects people in different ways to reframe. Let's keep going through this, and I want you to tell me about breath.
Oh, just the way you said that almost calmed me.
Okay,
because
good.
Our breath is, the source in our life. And speaking of mindfulness, one quick exercise is just to tune your attention into your breath and notice how it feels and notice everything about it. So it's a tool that we carry around all of the time.
Right. 10 deep breaths. It's, a simple way, but it can work to ground you a little bit.
Yes.
And, I mean, how many times take a deep breath? And, it's kind of a cliche, but I don't know. The more and more I hear cliches, the more and more I try and pay attention. Now that I'm a slightly wiser person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. How about we use this word earlier, stigma?
Oh, right. I think that I'm glad, you asked that in this setting, because every viewer here can help to destigmatize behavioral health and mental health issues. And I could go on a long tangent about why it became stigmatized, but I think there's always been a moral judgment on how somebody can cope or how somebody behaves in this world. And a lot of times, if we remove the moral component and just look at a person who needs some help, then there's a lot more compassion and a lot more empathy towards that person.
Wonderful. And last, but certainly not least, this is something that I've gone to counseling to work to cultivate more as someone who's very hard on themselves. Tell me about self-compassion.
Oh boy, I think the whole world needs more self-compassion. There's a wonderful author out there for folks who want to look her up, Kristen Neff.
Okay.
And she has studied a lot about self-compassion. I got to hear her speak last fall, and she defines self-compassion in 3 components.
Okay.
The first is having mindfulness of suffering.
Okay.
Right. So you can't be compassionate to the homeless person on the street if you didn't see the homeless person.
Okay.
So if you don't know that you're suffering, or you're minimizing your suffering, or ignoring it, or avoiding it through use of alcohol or any number of things, then you can't be compassionate with yourself. So mindfulness of suffering. The second component is a shared common experience.
Okay.
So to recognize that I'm not alone in my suffering. You suffer. Everybody's suffering. So it's a part of life. Right. And so to acknowledge that what I'm going through right now is painful and it's hard, and to be able to say, AJ's gone through hard times too. And the person I just passed in the grocery store that looks super happy and has it all together has gone through hard times, and to bring that common humanity to it. And then the third component is being kind to oneself.
Yeah.
So doing, if you're having a stressful day and you feel like you just keep making mistakes or can't get it right, take a moment and reflect, ouch, this is hard. I'm having a hard day. And you'll notice you're telling yourself, I'm so stupid. I always make mistakes. We have these automatic thoughts.
If my best friend talked to me the way I talk to myself,
Yes.
I punch his lights out.
And
that's not very positive, but
Yes.
that's, just to, demonstrate we're tough on ourselves.
Exactly. That's a great technique. Treat yourself like you would a dear friend.
Right. Someone that you
that's-
want to be successful and you would, work to nurture them.
Yeah.
Very
Another
nice.
one I've heard is you can print a little picture of yourself when you were a kid.
Uh-huh.
And every time you start talking to yourself, imagine you're saying that to that little AJ.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody would
Just
treat a
talking to-
kid like
just talking to
that
giant
way.
baby AJ.
So some techniques to practice self-compassion, but she's a great resource for people to check out.
Wonderful. A good book that I've read too, and maybe you've read also, is Brene Brown.
Oh, yep, she does a lot of
I
good work.
really liked her book, The Gifts of Imperfection.
That's a great one.
And I know she's got maybe it's Daring Boldly
Mm-hmm.
or Greatly.
Greatly.
Daring Greatly.
Something. No, I can't
Something like that.
remember.
Maybe I'll put some links in the description
Yes.
below. But she's a super lady, and she studied a lot of shame and trauma, and it's very interesting to get a different outlook on these things and get a little practical advice and some affirmations from it. So
It's good research. If you could link to their TED Talks too.
okay,
So Brene Brown and Kristen Neff.
Kristen
Great.
Neff,
N-E-F-F.
NEFF.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll link to those things too. Laura, thank you for what you do and
Thank you,
for
Andrew.
the behavioral service that you provide to the folks in the San Luis Valley. It's not always the easiest place to live sometimes, right? There's tough situations here, and I'm excited to be a part of a wellness program that embraces behavioral health, because we can work to cultivate some more of that self-compassion and be nice enough to ourselves to take care of ourselves. So thank you so much for sitting down with me, unpacking some of these things. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me, AJ.
Give me a 5.
There we
Thank you so
go.
much, Laura.